Hi, and welcome to a somewhat late night PEPP story show. I was due to be interviewing someone at Ruth Fogg at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Unfortunately, I had some technical problems that we couldn't overcome with sound. We're going to revisit that, and we've postponed to another date. So I'm just doing a little fill-in show tonight to talk about why we do speaking. Why is it so important to us? What are the various different options for speaking? Anyway, it's just going to be a quite laid back chat tonight. So here we are going to be talking about why we speak in public. What's it all about? And we've been talking about this whole purpose, experience, passion, performance story, and I want to try and sort of just look at a few of the ways in which I've got drawn into speaking over my life, because I don't think anybody sets out and thinks, that's it, I'm going to be a speaker. It's not the one thing. And to be honest, actually, at 11 years old, I got to have not 11, at 14, I had a conversation with a school, what should we call it, careers officer. And he said, well, have you got any disabilities? I said, well, and at that stage, I lost a tooth when I was about 11. I said, I've lost a tooth, so I have to have a plate. Oh, well, he said, that's probably not a problem, not unless you want to be an actor or a public speaker. I thought it's pretty ironic that actually acting was the first choice that I later went down the road of trying to become, and public speaking is what actually ended up being my lifetime passion. So, and that's the whole thing. I speak because I'm very passionate about it. But the very first time was actually at around about, 11 years old. I went to a small private school for a couple of years, and the teacher there, the head teacher, Miss Bailey, was obsessed with elocution. She loved elocution and country dancing, and we had to get involved in all those. This was in the early 60s. And she used to send us all off to a regular poetry and dance festival every year at Eisteddfod. That's what they were called in Wales. I was in Wiltshire, and we went off to this. And I remember learning a poem. I still know most of it today. By W.H. Auden, called Our Biases. The hourglass whispers to the lion's roar. The clock towers tell the gardens day and night how many errors time has patience for. How wrong they are in being always right. And so on. I'm not going to do the whole poem tonight. It's only a short one anyway, but that was it. I learnt the biases, the hourglass whispers to the lion's roar, and it stayed with me all my life. I've always known it, and I really got a bit of a bug for doing poetry, so much so that I subsequently even took exams in delivering poetry. Then, when I was it was only a couple of years later, my parents used to buy me for a Christmas present these puppet shows, and it was just a little book, and he popped everything out and created this puppet show. And in my case, it was a Punch and Judy show that I first started off with all the Punch and Judy. I'm probably not allowed to do that now because it was extremely brutal, horrendously racist. Everything was wrong about the Punch and Judy shows then, but that was part of our culture in the 60s. But I loved them, and I lived in a pub. My mum and dad ran a pub, and they would let me do these Punch and Judy shows to some of the regular customers on a Sunday afternoon, and we'd either do it in the garden or sometimes in the lounge bar, which was separate from the main bar, so it didn't qualify as being licensed premises. Well, probably did, but they thought it was okay. So that was that, and I used to do those sorts of things all the time, and I think in every way I could, if I found an opportunity to get involved in a little bit of acting or whatever, I did it. When I got to college, I was heavily involved and invested in doing sciences, and I did type at college. Every Wednesday afternoon was always a free period, and it was a time when you could do something completely out of what you were normally doing. Well, the first 2 years I was doing sciences, and in the first year I took typing. I have no idea why I decided to take up typing, but I learned touch typing. That has proved to be quite a useful skill later in life, but who knew? back in 1966 that was going to be a useful skill before even electronic typewriters existed. The following year, I had to do physics practical, so that dumped it. But having failed my science A levels, I came back, and this was when my friend said, "Look, why don't you join the drama group?" And I got the part of Mark Antony and Julius Caesar. So obviously before I transitioned or whatever. Now, the big part in the play of Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, is Mark Antony's friends, Romans, countrymen speak, and everybody knows it. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones, and so on. Now, everybody knows about the speech, and people have heard the speech from time to time and saw not Charlton Heston, Marlon Brando doing it in the film. But learning the speech and working through the speech, and I subsequently did it as a piece for my verse and prose exams. It was probably the first big keynote address that I ever delivered, because that's exactly what it is. It's a huge keynote address, not just a keynote address, it's an inspirational, motivational speech. The purpose of that speech is to turn a crowd. Julius Caesar has been killed by all of the senators led by Brutus. Brutus is now heralded as the new leader, is going to be heading up to lead everything along with Cassius. And they need to get to the crowd and say, "Hey, look, we've killed Caesar, but my God, we have saved you from such terrible torment because he was a tyrant." And Antony is a very great friend of Caesar and says, "Well, I want to speak at his funeral." And they said, "Oh, okay, fine. Just as long as you speak well of us and don't do anything horrible, then we'll let you speak at the funeral." And so Antony goes up and turns the crowd around and creates mayhem as the whole crowd turns against the conspirators. And that speech is so powerfully written. And I learned so much just from learning and performing that speech for 6 nights as a performer. After that, I went off to Butlins where I had to MC events. And, you're arranging I say events, it was the Knobbly Knees competition or a kids show or whatever. So as a Butlins Redcoat, we were often having to get up and speak and encourage people and announce winners and losers and things like that, and then get up and sing. And so I was just a general duties Redcoat, but we had to do all sorts of bits and pieces. So I started getting into speaking and announcing, and it's still speaking. It's still getting up and delivering speeches, and it built that passion in me to want to do it. When I got into work, I was going to try and go for drama as a career, but I wasn't good enough as an actor. I think I'm probably a lot better now than I was then. But anyway, I wasn't good as an actor. And so I ended up in the insurance industry, and I ended up becoming a trainer, seminar leader, workshop leader. And all those people make entire careers, obviously, about being trainers, workshop leaders, seminar leaders. And there's a huge passion for doing that. I got into senior management, and therefore, as a manager, leader, supervisor, I also had to, speak to staff and encourage staff and speak at meetings, speak at launches, annual meetings, all of these things where we're drawn to have to speak, and some in bigger roles than others. But if you don't speak, if you're not very good at speaking, what happens is that when the opportunity, and somebody says, "Oh, could you get up and address the staff?" "Oh, I'd rather do it. I'll let somebody else do that." What's happening is you're stepping away from opportunities to shine, opportunities to be seen as a good leader, to be seen as a manager, to be seen as someone who can change behaviors, because that's what trainers do. We change people's behavior by the process of training. And it's a longer process than speaking, but it's a really important process. I spent years as a trainer, and it's those skills I learned as a trainer and as a workshop leader which led to me becoming a keynote speaker. But also we get involved as community leaders and advocates for various things. And when I When I changed gender, I mean, at this stage I was already a speaker. I'd set up the Professional Speaking Association. And in fact, I'm going to go back before we look at that. And I just want to talk about Toastmasters, because I joined Toastmasters quite a long way back. I'd already been doing speaking. I'd gone through my track of being a trainer, and I'd got myself a keynote address. So I was beginning to be a professional speaker, but I'd never really had any proper training. I'd done a Dale Carnegie course, and I'd done some one or two courses to improve my speaking. But I joined Toastmasters in 1990, and Toastmasters, it's an American organization. There is an English one, the Association of Speakers Clubs, which actually was a breakaway from Toastmasters, and they formed, and that was partly over money, the fact that they didn't want to have to pay money to the American organization. But if you go to a Toastmasters meeting, there are a variety of roles, and I just want to talk about those because you can see why there are so many places where we need to get up and speak. The Toastmaster is the MC for the evening, the person who introduces everybody and keeps the meeting under control. In April, I'm doing this on a virtual event where I'm going to be the MC for an entire meeting. I have friends who do their entire career is just about being an MC, they Toastmaster. You'll have also heard about the Red Coat Toastmasters, which is different. They wear red coats, and they're speakers. They go to meetings. They introduce people, they announce who's going to be the next speaker, they introduce guests that are coming in, and they do the formal presentations of the evening. It's a profession. It's something that they do for a living. Well, don't get paid a huge amount for it, but it's something they do for a living. Then you've got the speakers, people individually getting up and at a Toastmaster club and doing a speech. Following a manual of 10 projects, they deliver a speech based upon their life and learning the principles I've been talking about through this program: purpose, experience, passion, performance, storytelling. That all of those principles are developed, and in fact, that whole formula came from my working in Toastmasters. And every speaker is then evaluated. Somebody listens to the speech and then stands up and delivers a 3-minute speech, providing the speaker with feedback on what they did well and where they could improve from their perspective. It's not a professional critique. It's just purely a member of the audience giving a speech about what they've just heard. And to keep this whole thing together, then you have to have timekeepers. So somebody is carefully monitoring the time, putting up signals, reminding people when the time is, and then giving some feedback on who did well on time, who didn't do well on time. So it's still a speaking opportunity and a role. There's a grammarian. The grammarian's role in a Toastmaster club is to listen to all the speeches and highlight really good use of grammar. Also, they give a word for the evening and try and encourage everybody to use a word that they might not have normally used. There's an R counter. The R counter looks for all those ums, the R's, the rights and sort ofs and repetitive speech that we might drop into our speaking, try and encouraging people to not use those, just to pause instead of going, just pause. Anyway, that's their job. There's also then an impromptu speaking part of the meeting where a topics master picks topics for the evening, assigns it, and anybody who hasn't spoken gets to stand up and do a 2-minute impromptu speak. They're the topic speakers. And at the end of that, somebody then gets up and evaluates everything that's happened in that process. And then somebody evaluates the whole meeting. So you can see that there's a whole lot of different roles, sometimes as many as 25 people in an evening, all doing some different type of role within it, but each of them is a speaking role. Each of them is learning how to develop their speaking ability in some form or another. And I think it's important to recognize that, speaking isn't just about getting up and doing a big keynote speech or doing a training. There are so many opportunities where learning to be a great speaker will really carry you in your career and in your life. I set up a social enterprise for a while, did an enormous amount of work there. When I changed gender, I went to college and I had to do presentations at the university as I was doing my master's degree. And I joined the National Union of Students, got very, very actively involved in a whole bunch of political things. So there was an LGB, lesbian, gay, bisexual campaign, which excluded trans people. And I was really upset about that. So for 2 years, I campaigned with political speeches at some of the student meetings, and I got it changed. I managed to persuade people to accept a motion and an idea to change the way that transgender people were treated within this organization. So politicians, and obviously we see politicians all the time. Not all politicians have to be quite as bad as some of our current ones, but there are political speeches in every way, shape and form, whether it's from the local parish council to European parliaments. People are speaking, trying to persuade, trying to put forward ideas. And the better you are at speaking, the more likely those ideas are to carry. And at the top of the tree of speaking, I suppose, are the keynote speakers. Probably at the bottom of the tree of that. But, speaking fees ranging from a few thousand to literally hundreds of thousands. Some of the ex-prime ministers and presidents can draw huge, huge sums, 50, 100, 150,000 pounds just for getting up and doing a speech. There are TEDx talks. Thousands and thousands of people now have done TEDx talks. Now, I've done all of these roles. And it's by continuously learning and developing craft that we all learn to be. Why do I do it? I love speaking. I love being able to change people's minds. I love being able to share ideas. I love to hear laughter come back because I said something that was funny. I love people coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, that was so good. Thank you. It so helped me." The best thing of all is when somebody says, "I heard you speak 10 years ago. It changed my life." I can't ask for better payment than that, that someone's life was changed for the better as a result of something that I said, something that I spoke. So that's it, speaking. There are so many opportunities, so many roles. And I watch people who are scared to speak, people who don't want to do it, or who just decide that they can't do it wrongly, put themselves out of the running for so many opportunities, so many great experiences, just because they cannot set aside some time to learn. I hope you've got the sense from this 30-day challenge I've done that it's actually not that difficult. If you've got a clear sense of purpose, a message you want to convey, and that's it, one message. Doesn't matter what the speaking objective is, one message that you draw on your experiences and your expertise to deliver that message. You talk on a topic about which you are passionate. I talk about speaking because it's a passion. I talk about gender because it's a passion. And those are my two big passions in life. Creating a fairer world where everyone's gender is accepted, where everyone has a voice. I just would like to see a fairer world, and giving people the voice to speak out, to speak their truth, I think is one of the ways to do it. It is a performance. We're all in show business. When you're speaking, you are entertaining people, you are educating people, you are encouraging people down the road. And if you don't entertain, if you don't make it a performance, if you don't make it something people enjoy watching, well, what was the point of listening to you? They might just as well have read the article, read a document. It's got to be different, hasn't it? It's got to be a little bit different. And overriding it all, if you're a speaker, you're a storyteller. And, if the best place to start is with your kids, telling them stories at night, well, there's no better place to start. I certainly done that. Recorded stories for my kids when I was away and such like. So, anyway, I hope you found that useful and interesting. Speaking is a passion. Speaking is something that we should all acquire the skill at, and we can use it in so many different ways. Join me tomorrow. I shall be interviewing another speaker, Joe Berry, somebody in my mastermind group. And don't forget, if you've got a TED talk or a keynote coming up or something you need that really needs to be polished up, well, get some speaking coaching. drop me a line, ricky@rickyarundel.com, and arrange a 30-minute free introductory session. Almost ready to launch my new website, or at least part of my new website. You'll be able to just book in and jot some time there. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed the whole month I've been doing this, and tomorrow will be the last one, but it won't be ending because I'm going to be doing PEPP Story live every week. I'm just trying to figure out which is the best day of the week to fit things in for me, and I've got my gender speaker talks, which will be starting again in February, Monday, LGBT History Month. Going to be lots of good stuff about that coming up. Thank you for being with me. Enjoyed your company, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care.